It was a warm afternoon in the city, the kind of day when the sun shone bright but the cool breeze kept the heat manageable. The streets were busy as usual, with cars rushing by, people chatting on sidewalks, and the occasional bus honking its horn. For most people, it was just another day, but for a young boy, it was a day that would change his life forever. He had lived in the same neighborhood for most of his life, surrounded by towering buildings and narrow streets. His family didn't have much. His mother worked long hours at a small shop just down the road, while his father had passed away when he was just a baby. He grew up knowing that life wasn't easy, but he had always tried to make the best of it. He helped his mother whenever he could, running errands, carrying groceries, and sometimes just being there for her when she needed a hand. Despite the challenges, he was always optimistic, believing that things would get better one day. That afternoon, he was walking back from the corner store, a bag of bread clutched tightly in his hands. He had just finished his daily errand and was on his way home when something caught his eye. A car, moving much too fast, was speeding down the street. It was swerving and its tires screeched against the pavement. The boy instinctively stepped back to avoid the oncoming vehicle. But what he saw next froze him in place. A woman had stepped out of her car just a moment before, seemingly unaware of the danger heading her way. She was standing at the edge of the sidewalk looking around, when the out-of-control car headed straight for her. In that split second, time seemed to slow down. The boy's heart raced as he realized what was about to happen. Without thinking, he dropped the bag of bread and ran toward her. He didn't even consider the risk. All that mattered was reaching her in time. The woman was too focused on the street ahead, not noticing the car coming toward her. The boy's legs moved faster than he ever thought possible. He reached the woman just as the car was mere feet away. Without a moment's hesitation, he grabbed her arm and yanked her back, pulling her out of the car's path. The force of the movement threw them both to the ground, and the car passed by them, crashing into a nearby light pole with a loud crash. The sound of the impact echoed in the boy's ears, but he hardly noticed. He was too focused on the woman he had just saved. The woman let out a gasp, her body trembling with shock. She looked up at him wide-eyed, her face pale. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The boy was breathing heavily, still trying to process what had just happened. He had acted without thinking, and now that the danger was over, he felt a strange mix of relief and disbelief. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice shaky. The woman slowly nodded, her hand pressed to her chest as she tried to calm herself down. I think so. I don't know what just happened. You saved my life." The boy stood up, dusting off his jeans. He didn't know what to say. He hadn't done it for any reward. He hadn't expected anything in return. He had just done what felt right in that moment. "I just saw you in trouble and I couldn't just stand there," he said softly. The woman slowly got to her feet, still shaky but now more aware of her surroundings. She looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and astonishment. "You were so quick. I don't know how you did it." He shrugged, feeling awkward now that the danger had passed. "It's nothing. Just lucky, I guess." The woman smiled weakly, wiping a tear from her eye. "No, it's not nothing. I don't know how to thank you." Before the boy could respond, a few people had gathered around the scene, and one of them was already on the phone, likely calling for help. The woman looked around, noticing the crowd that had started to form. "Maybe we should get off the street," she said, her voice a little more composed now. "Let's go somewhere quiet." The boy didn't argue. Together they walked a few steps away from the wreckage, moving toward a nearby cafe. As they sat down, the woman ordered some water for both of them, trying to calm her nerves. The boy couldn't help but notice the contrast between the two of them. Here he was in his worn clothes, his shoes barely holding together, sitting across from a woman who clearly didn't belong in his world. She was dressed in an elegant suit, her makeup perfect despite the shock, and there was an air of refinement about her that he couldn't ignore. "Thank you again," the woman said, breaking the silence. "You've done something I'll never forget." The boy nodded, still feeling awkward. He wasn't used to this kind of attention. "It's really nothing. I didn't want you to get hurt." She smiled again, but this time it was warmer, more genuine. "What's your name?" He hesitated for a moment before answering. "I'm just a kid who lives around here." He didn't want to go into the details of his life. It wasn't much to be proud of. The woman seemed to sense his discomfort and didn't press him further. Instead, she told him her name, though it felt strange to the boy. She was the wife of a businessman, someone who probably owned half the city. He couldn't imagine what she'd see in a place like this, let alone someone like him. They sat in silence for a while, drinking their water and watching the world go by outside the cafe window. The woman eventually broke the silence again. I know this might sound strange, but would you like to come by my place tomorrow? I'd love to talk more to properly thank you. The boy was taken aback by the offer. No one ever offered him anything like this. He had no idea what to say. I don't know. I don't really have time. Please, she interrupted, her tone sincere. I insist. You've saved my life. The least I can do is offer you a small favor in return. The boy still wasn't sure, but after a moment he realized he didn't have much to lose. He agreed, though he had no idea what the woman had in mind. As they said their goodbyes and parted ways, the boy couldn't help but feel that this encounter, however strange, was the beginning of something much bigger than anything he had ever imagined. Little did he know that the next day, his life was about to change in ways he couldn't possibly understand. The next day, the boy woke up to the sound of his mother calling from the other room. It was still early, and the light filtering through the small window made the room feel warm and quiet. He stretched and rubbed his eyes, still thinking about the events of the day before. He had saved a woman's life, but he couldn't quite wrap his mind around what had happened. It all felt like a dream, a moment frozen in time that seemed too surreal to be real. But the invitation from the woman was real, and he had agreed to meet her later that day. His mother had already left for work when he finally got out of bed, so he had the house to himself for a while. He moved around the small kitchen, making himself a quick breakfast, trying to push the nerves aside. His mind kept drifting back to the cafe conversation. The woman had been kind, almost too kind, and the idea of meeting her again in her world, the world of luxury and wealth, was intimidating. It wasn't that he didn't appreciate the kindness, but he was afraid of what this new world might mean for him. He was used to his own, a life full of challenges but familiar nonetheless. After breakfast, he went to his room and started getting ready. He didn't have much to wear, but he picked the cleanest shirt he owned and made sure his shoes were tied properly. As he looked in the mirror, he tried to shake off the self-doubt that crept in. He had no idea what to expect, but he knew that this could be a turning point in his life. A chance that many people never got. He couldn't waste it. By the time he left the house, the sun had risen higher in the sky, and the city was alive with the sounds of people starting their day. The boy made his way through the streets, walking with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt before. His steps were steady, but his heart raced. He tried to push away the feeling of being out of place as he neared the area where the woman lived. The neighborhood looked nothing like his own. The streets were wide, the buildings tall and elegant, and there were fancy cars parked along the road. As he walked, he couldn't help but notice the contrast between his life and the one he was about to enter. When he reached the address she had given him, he stopped in front of a large white building with a neatly trimmed lawn and a tall iron gate. The place looked like something out of a magazine, with flowers and trees lining the pathway to the front door. He stood there for a moment, unsure whether he should knock or just leave. It felt like a world far beyond his reach, a place where he didn't belong. But he had promised to come, and he couldn't back out now. Taking a deep breath, he pressed the doorbell. Within moments, the door opened, and the woman greeted him with a warm smile. She looked even more elegant than he remembered, wearing a light dress that seemed to flow effortlessly. "I'm so glad you came," she said, her voice gentle. "Please, come in." He stepped inside, and the difference between this house and his own couldn't have been more apparent. The interior was spacious and tastefully decorated, with soft lighting and expensive furniture. It felt like a completely different world, one that he had only ever seen in movies or on TV. He tried not to stare, but it was hard not to notice the lavishness of everything around him. She led him to a comfortable living room where they both sat down. A moment of silence passed before the woman spoke again. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "I know that. Yesterday was a lot, and I can only imagine how overwhelming it must have been." The boy shrugged, still feeling awkward. "I'm fine, just still trying to understand what happened, I guess." She nodded understandingly. "I get it. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns, but I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you properly. You did something that I will never forget, and I want to make sure you know how much I appreciate it." He shifted in his seat, unsure of how to respond. He wasn't used to this kind of attention. People in his life, even his own family, hadn't exactly been showering him with praise. He was just a kid trying to get by, and now he was sitting in a stranger's mansion, being thanked for something that he hadn't even thought twice about doing. The woman reached over to the table and pulled out a small envelope. "This is for you," she said, handing it to him. He took it, hesitating before opening it. Inside there was a check. His eyes widened as he read the number written on it. It was far more than he had ever seen in his life. The amount on the check could pay for years of rent, food, and school supplies. It was more money than he could ever imagine earning. I don't understand," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you giving me this?" She smiled kindly. "You didn't do what you did yesterday for money. But this is my way of showing my gratitude, and I believe that you deserve better than what life has given you so far. I want to help you in any way I can." The boy felt his stomach twist. It wasn't that he didn't appreciate the gesture. He knew that many people would dream of receiving such a gift. But it felt strange to accept something so generous, especially from someone he barely knew. I don't know if I can accept this," he said, feeling embarrassed. "You don't have to decide right now," she replied. "Just think about it. But don't feel like you have to refuse because of pride. I want to help you, and this is one way I can do that." He nodded, still unsure but feeling the weight of the check in his hands. He couldn't deny that the offer was tempting. He had always dreamed of going to school, getting a better education, and eventually getting a job that would allow him to help his mother. But how could he take money from someone he barely knew? It didn't sit well with him, but at the same time he didn't want to let this opportunity slip away. Before he could say anything else, the woman spoke again, her tone softer. "I know this is a lot to take in, but there's more I want to offer you. A chance to change your life." The boy looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "I know a businessman, someone who runs a successful company," she explained. "He's looking for someone to help with some office work. It's not much at first, but it's a start. And if you're willing, I can introduce you to him. He's the kind of person who can give you opportunities, and I believe you have the potential to do well in that kind of environment." The boy listened carefully, his heart racing. The idea of working for a businessman sounded like something out of a dream. He had never considered a future in the corporate world. It seemed so far removed from his own life, but what if this was the chance he had been waiting for? The woman continued. "This could be your opportunity to get out of this cycle. I've seen something in you, and I believe you can achieve so much more." He sat there in silence, his mind racing with possibilities. It felt like everything was moving too fast, but at the same time it felt like a door had just been opened that he never expected, a chance to build a future, to do something beyond the limitations of his current life. For a moment he could hardly believe it. Was this really happening? Could he really change his life just like that? The boy looked at the woman, unsure whether to take the leap or walk away. But deep down he knew that he couldn't let fear hold him back. This was his moment. With a deep breath he finally spoke. "I'll do it. I'll take the chance." The following morning the boy woke up early. It was still dark outside and the world felt quiet. He had a lot on his mind and sleep had not come easily. The woman's offer from the day before replayed over and over in his head. A new job, a chance to work with someone important. It all sounded too good to be true. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized this might be his only shot at something better. His mother was still asleep when he quietly got dressed. He didn't want to wake her. She worked long hours, and he didn't want to bother her with his nerves. The boy made his way to the small kitchen and grabbed a piece of bread, chewing it slowly as he thought about the day ahead. This was it. Today he was meeting the businessman, the one the woman had mentioned. He had no idea what to expect, but he couldn't let the opportunity slip away. He had to try. When he stepped outside, the air was crisp and fresh. The sun hadn't yet risen and the streets were still calm. He walked quickly, the weight of his thoughts heavy on his shoulders. He couldn't help but feel out of place in this neighborhood. It wasn't like his own, where things were familiar. Here, everything felt polished, well-kept, almost perfect. It didn't take long to reach the building where the woman had told him to meet the businessman. It was a sleek, modern structure with glass windows that reflected the sunlight as it began to rise. The boy stood for a moment in front of it, feeling small. This was a world he had never been a part of. A world where people wore suits, carried briefcases, and lived lives far removed from the struggles he faced every day. Taking a deep breath, he walked through the glass doors and into the lobby. The inside of the building was just as impressive as the outside: smooth marble floors, shiny elevators, and walls adorned with art. He walked up to the receptionist, who was sitting behind a sleek desk typing away on a computer. She looked up at him briefly, then back at her screen, not paying much attention. "I'm here to see Mr. Businessman's name," the boy said, his voice soft but steady. The receptionist finally glanced up. "Do you have an appointment?" "Yes," he answered, pulling out a small piece of paper from his pocket where the woman had written down the details. He handed it to her. She read it quickly, then nodded, directing him to the elevator. "Take it to the top floor. Mr. Businessman's name is expecting you." The boy nodded and stepped toward the elevator, his heart beating faster. He pressed the button and waited as the doors slid open. He stepped inside, pressing the top floor button. As the elevator began to rise, he looked at his reflection in the polished walls. For the first time, he didn't just see a boy from the streets. He saw someone who might belong in a place like this. He wasn't sure if it was his nerves or the excitement of the moment, but something about this place made him feel like maybe he could be someone different, someone important. When the elevator dinged, signaling his arrival, he stepped out and into another sleek lobby. A man in a suit stood near the door waiting for him. His face was friendly but serious, like someone who had seen a lot in his life. The man extended his hand. "You must be the young man I've been hearing about." The boy shook his hand, feeling the strength of the grip. "Yes, sir. I'm here for the job." "Good," the man said, nodding. "Follow me." He led the boy down a hallway to a large office with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a stunning view of the city. The office was minimalist, with a large desk, a few chairs, and shelves full of books. Behind the desk sat a man in his 40s, his posture straight, his appearance neat and polished. He was dressed in a sharp suit, and his face had an air of authority to it. But when he saw the boy, he gave him a welcoming smile. "Welcome," the businessman said, standing up and walking around his desk to shake the boy's hand. "It's good to finally meet you in person." The boy felt a little out of his depth, but he tried not to show it. "Thank you for giving me the chance to come." "I'm glad you're here," the businessman replied. "I heard about your actions yesterday. What you did was brave. Not many people would have reacted so quickly in that situation." "I respect that." The boy didn't know what to say. He had only done what seemed right in the moment. He hadn't expected any praise, let alone a job offer. "I understand that this is a big step for you," the businessman continued. "You're probably wondering why I'm offering this opportunity. The truth is, I've been looking for someone with your qualities. Someone who isn't afraid to take initiative. Someone who doesn't back down in the face of danger. That's rare, especially in this world." He paused for a moment as if considering something. "But more than that, I believe you can learn. I believe you have the potential to do something big with your life." The boy felt a lump form in his throat. He had never heard anyone speak about him like this. He had always been told he wasn't good enough, that he was just another kid in a tough neighborhood. But here in this office, the businessman was telling him he could be more. "I'm willing to offer you a position in my company. It's not glamorous work at first, answering phones, running errands, that sort of thing, but it's a start. And I believe that if you put in the effort, you could go far here." The boy stood there, unable to speak for a moment. He had expected to be offered some sort of task, maybe some menial work, but nothing like this. A real job. A chance to build a future. The businessman smiled, noticing the boy's silence. "Ta. Your time to think about it. I understand this is a lot to take in, but I want you to know that the door is open for you. If you want to take it, we can start right away." The boy felt a wave of emotion rush over him. He had never imagined something like this would happen to him. The opportunities he had dreamed about seemed so far out of reach, like a distant fantasy. But now, standing in front of this man, he realized that maybe, just maybe, this could be his reality. He took a deep breath and looked up at the businessman. "I want to take it," he said, his voice clear and steady. "I'll do whatever it takes." The businessman nodded approvingly. "That's what I wanted to hear. Let's get started then." As the boy walked out of the office that day, something had shifted inside him. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was on the edge of something bigger than himself. Something that could change not just his future, but the future of those he cared about most. It wasn't going to be easy. He knew that. But for the first time, he believed he had a real chance to make something of himself. And for the first time in his life, he felt hopeful. The first few weeks on the job were harder than the boy had expected. It wasn't just the work itself, it was the environment. The office was quiet and professional, with people walking around in crisp suits and speaking in hushed tones. He felt like a fish out of water, unsure of how to fit in, but every day he pushed through, reminding himself that this was the chance he had been waiting for. This was his moment to prove that he belonged here, even if it was a world far beyond what he was used to. His responsibilities started out small. He answered phones, organized files, and ran errands. It wasn't glamorous work, but it kept him busy. At first he felt awkward, unsure of how to interact with the people around him. They all seemed so polished, so confident, while he was just a kid from the streets trying to find his way. But the businessman, whose office was at the top of the building, was patient with him. He would occasionally stop by, ask how things were going, and offer words of encouragement. "You're doing well," the businessman would say with a smile. "Keep at it. This is how you start." Everyone begins somewhere. The boy had never heard anyone speak to him like that. It felt strange at first, but over time he began to appreciate the encouragement. It was the first time someone had believed in him, really believed in him, and it made a difference. He worked harder, pushed himself further, and kept learning. Slowly but surely, he started to get the hang of things. One afternoon, a few weeks into his job, the businessman called him into his office. The boy hesitated for a moment before knocking on the door and stepping inside. The businessman was sitting at his desk, looking over some papers. He glanced up and smiled. "Come in," he said, motioning for the boy to sit down. The boy sat across from him, his hands nervously clasped in his lap. "You wanted to see me, sir?" The businessman nodded. "I've been watching you, and I have to say I'm impressed with your progress. You've been working hard, and I can see you're learning quickly." The boy felt a wave of pride wash over him. It wasn't much, but it was more than he had ever received before. "Thank you, sir," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I think it's time to give you a bit more responsibility," the businessman continued. "I've noticed that you're ready for the next step." The boy's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected this so soon. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm going to have you assist me with a project," the businessman said. "It's a small task at first, but it's important. I want to see how you handle it." The boy nodded eagerly. This was it, the opportunity he had been waiting for. "I'm ready, sir." "I'll do my best," the businessman smiled. "I know you will." For the next few days, the boy worked closely with the businessman, learning more about the company and its operations. The project involved researching potential clients, organizing meetings, and preparing presentations. It was far more complex than the tasks he had done before, but he found that he enjoyed the challenge. It felt good to be trusted with something bigger. Every time he finished a task, the businessman would check his work, give feedback, and offer suggestions. The boy felt himself improving, growing more confident with each passing day. He spent hours at his desk, his focus unwavering as he worked. He was used to working long hours. He had done it for years at home, but this felt different. There was a sense of purpose behind the work now, something he had never experienced before. As the days turned into weeks, he began to see the results of his efforts. The businessman was impressed with his work, and his confidence began to grow. One afternoon, the boy stayed late at the office, finishing up some last-minute tasks. The building was quiet, with most of the employees having gone home for the day. As he was packing up his things, the businessman walked by his desk and stopped. "You're still here?" he asked, surprised. The boy looked up and smiled. "Just finishing up a few things." The businessman nodded approvingly. "I like your dedication. Keep it up. You're doing great work." The boy's chest swelled with pride. He couldn't remember the last time someone had praised him like this, and it felt good. "Thank you, sir." The businessman leaned against the desk for a moment, looking thoughtful. "You've been with us for a little while now, and I can see that you have a lot of potential. You're not just here to fill a position. You're here because I believe you can do more, and I think it's time to take the next step." The boy's heart raced. He had been working hard, but he never imagined that this moment would come so soon. "What do you mean?" he asked, trying to hide the excitement in his voice. "I'm going to promote you," the businessman said with a smile. I want you to take on a leadership role within the company. You'll manage a small team, help with client relations, and oversee some projects. You've earned this, and I think you're ready." The boy's mind was spinning. A promotion? A leadership role? It all felt so unreal. But as he looked at the businessman's serious expression, he realized that this wasn't a joke. This was happening. I don't know what to say," the boy stammered. "You don't have to say anything," the businessman replied. "Your work speaks for itself. You've done more than anyone expected, and now it's time to show what you can really do." The boy sat there, still processing everything. It was overwhelming, but at the same time he felt a sense of pride and excitement that he had never felt before. He had come so far in such a short time, and now he was being given the chance to take things even further. The businessman smiled again, standing up. "I know this is a lot to take in, but I have no doubt that you'll rise to the occasion. I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do." As the boy left the office that evening, he couldn't help but feel like a different person. He had walked into this company as just another kid from the streets, unsure of where his life would lead. But now he was a part of something bigger. He was part of a team, a company that believed in him, and for the first time in his life, he felt like he was on the path to something great. The next morning, when he arrived at the office, he couldn't wait to get started. The promotion had given him a new sense of purpose, and he was determined to make the most of it. He worked harder than ever before, focused on proving that he was more than just a kid who had been given a chance. He was someone who could make a difference. As the weeks went by, the boy's confidence continued to grow. He managed his team with a calm determination, and his ability to connect with clients earned him respect within the company. He had become a key part of the team, and his work began to speak for itself. But he never forgot where he came from. Every time he walked through the door of the office, he remembered the streets, his family, and the struggles he had faced. And he promised himself that he would never take this opportunity for granted. He was going to make it. Not just for him, but for his family, too. The journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. But the boy knew one thing for sure. He was no longer the same person who had walked into the office for the first time. He had found his place in the world, and he wasn't going to let go of it. The days turned into weeks, and the boy's life began to change in ways he hadn't imagined. His promotion had been a turning point, but the real challenge was just beginning. As he stepped into his new role, he realized that the responsibilities came with a weight he hadn't fully understood at first. But with each passing day, he grew more capable. The work was tough, demanding, and often exhausting, but there was something about it that made him push forward. This wasn't just a job to him anymore. It was a chance to prove that he belonged. He spent long hours at the office, meeting clients, overseeing projects, and working closely with his team. His manager, the businessman, had been right. He was ready for more. Every time he took on a new task, he could feel himself getting better, more confident in his abilities. It wasn't just the work that was changing him. It was the people around him. The businessman, who had first seen something in him that no one else had, continued to be a guiding figure in his life. He trusted the boy with more important decisions, giving him the opportunity to be involved in high-level meetings and planning sessions. The boy had always been a dreamer, someone who looked at the world and wondered what it would be like to be a part of something bigger. Now he was living that dream. And yet, despite all the progress he had made, there were still moments when he felt the pull of his past. The boy's old neighborhood was never far from his mind. His mother was still working long hours, and though he was able to send her money to make her life a little easier, he couldn't help but feel guilty. He had left so much behind, and there were days when he missed the simplicity of life before the job, before the office, before all the pressure that came with success. One evening, after another long day at work, he sat in his office, looking out the window at the bustling city below. He was thinking about how much had changed in such a short time. But he also felt the weight of his choices. This wasn't just about him anymore. He was responsible for a team now, for the decisions he made and how they affected everyone around him. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of doubt, times when he wondered if he was doing the right thing or if he was in over his head. But those moments of uncertainty never lasted long. He reminded himself of where he came from, of how far he had come. He leaned back in his chair, trying to clear his mind, when his phone buzzed. It was a message from his mother. She had been asking about how he was doing, how work was going. Every time she reached out, he could hear the concern in her words. She had always been there for him, always supported him, even when things were tough. And now it was his turn to take care of her, to make sure she knew that her sacrifices hadn't gone unnoticed. He quickly typed back, telling her that everything was going well, that he was learning a lot and making progress. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't doing enough. His mother had always worked so hard for him. And now, even with everything he had achieved, he still felt like he was just scratching the surface. The next day, as he was finishing up a meeting with some clients, the businessman called him into his office. The boy had grown used to these calls by now, and he entered the office with the usual mix of anticipation and curiosity. "Sit down," the businessman said, motioning for him to take a seat across from his desk. "I wanted to talk to you about something important." The boy sat down, his mind racing. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he knew that when the businessman spoke, it was always something worth listening to. "You've been doing an excellent job," the businessman began. "I'm proud of the work you've put in. You've handled your responsibilities well, and you've shown a level of maturity that's rare, especially for someone your age." The boy felt a swell of pride at the compliment. He had worked hard to get to this point, and hearing that his efforts were being recognized felt good. But he also knew that there was more to the conversation. "I've been thinking a lot about the future," the businessman continued. "You're growing into your role here, but there's something else I want to discuss with you." The boy listened closely, trying to make sense of what the businessman was getting at. "You're capable of so much more," the businessman said. "I've seen your potential, and I think it's time for you to take the next step in your career." The boy's heart skipped a beat. He had always dreamed of getting ahead, but he never expected to be offered another opportunity so soon. He had just started to find his footing, and now the businessman was talking about the next step. "I want you to consider taking on a larger role," the businessman said. "A leadership position, one that involves overseeing multiple departments and making decisions that could shape the future of the company." The boy's mind raced. This was everything he had wanted, everything he had worked so hard for. But it was also a huge responsibility. He wasn't sure he was ready for something like this, but at the same time, he couldn't ignore the possibilities. This could be the opportunity of a lifetime. I don't know what to say," the boy stammered. "This is all so fast," the businessman smiled. "I know it's a big decision, but I believe in you. I've seen what you can do, and I have no doubt that you're ready for this. You've already proven yourself in ways that most people never do." The boy felt a mix of excitement and fear. He had worked so hard to get to this point, and now, here was the chance to take everything to the next level. But it was also terrifying. He had never imagined that he would be in this position. It felt like the stakes were higher now, that every decision he made would matter more. "I'm not sure I'm ready for all of this," the boy admitted. "It feels like so much." The businessman leaned forward, his gaze steady. "It's okay to feel that way, but I want you to remember something. You've already made it this far. You've proven yourself capable, and you've shown that you have what it takes to succeed. You're not alone in this. We'll be here to support you every step of the way." The boy nodded, feeling the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. This was it, the moment that would define his future. "I'll do it," the boy said, his voice steady now. "I'll take the chance." The businessman smiled, his eyes twinkling with approval. "I knew you would. You've got what it takes, and I'm proud of you. Let's get to work." As the boy walked out of the office that day, he felt a sense of clarity he hadn't felt before. He had made his decision. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, and he was going to seize it. It wasn't going to be easy, but nothing worth having ever was. He knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but he was ready for them. He looked out the window as he walked through the building, his mind focused on the future. His life had changed in ways he never imagined, and now, he was ready to take the next step. He had proven to himself that he was capable of so much more than he had ever thought possible. And for the first time in his life, he truly believed that he could achieve anything he set his mind to.